Hello. Today we're going to talk about body paragraphs in academia. Specifically, we're going to talk about the meal formula that has come out of the history program at the University of Colorado in Denver. Most body paragraphs should have the following four elements: a main idea, evidence, analysis, and link. A main idea is also known as a topic sentence. It is the part of the paragraph that introduces the subject of the paragraph. It might be easiest to think of a main idea as a micro thesis, a little claim or argument, much as the thesis is to a paper, a main idea is to each paragraph. Evidence is the variety of facts used to support that claim, the main idea. Evidence comes in a myriad of shapes. For this class, it's almost exclusively going to be coming in the form of direct quotations from the source material. But in 1410 and other courses, it could be paraphrases from secondary sources. It could be observations and personal experience. It even could be detailed explanations with examples. FYI, sentences rarely, if ever, should begin with quotes. This is your paper, and as such, because it's your writing, you should always hand the mic off. Give a brief introduction to every source. So as David Bartholomew says, or here's how to define inventing the university. Something where you are saying an answer and then you're going to organically lead off to that source material, that piece of evidence. Analysis is where things get a bit tricky. This is the number one most important thing to much of humanities, and specifically to our writing program, the ability to analyze. And yet it's the one part that most writers, especially student writers, really struggle with. Evidence should always be followed by analysis, where in your own words, you tell your reader exactly how this connects back to the main point. Analysis can begin with, "This passage shows," or "This research proves." Perhaps it's best to think of analysis as the answer to that "so what" question, or "what's your point?" I got the pleasure of working with Will Cuskin a few years ago. He's the Dean of English at CU Boulder, and he teaches comic books. And in his MOOC on comic books and graphic novels, he explains that for analysis is nothing more than breaking down a problem into component parts in which you can study each component part and how it contributes to the whole. This is the one I want you to truly focus on. Analysis is the most important thing in this discussion. The last part of any paragraph should be a link, and a link breaks into two different elements. The first link is a connection back to your thesis. You have an overarching argument, and this paragraph supports that argument. However, it may not be exactly clear how the two are interrelated. So a link says, here is how this directly supports my overarching argument. Similarly, links also link to one paragraph to the next. These are also known as transitions. Quite often, it is just overtly obvious that a paragraph is supporting the thesis because the verbiage is almost verbatim. And quite often, one paragraph is only nuanced difference from the next. But to be candid with you, more often than not, the links that we see in our head as writers are not the same links our audience sees. This gets back to audience and analysis. The audience may not see a quote the way we see it, so we need to spell it out. Same with link. We have to spell out exactly how this piece connects to the overall whole and how this piece, this paragraph, segues to the next. Let's look at some examples and see how this works in Davis's essay, "Does Coming to College Mean Becoming Someone New?" So follow along at home, get out some different colored highlighters, different colored pens, and then turn to page 82 in Language Acts. Alternatively, if you don't have your book handy, here is the excerpt. You can click on the actual image, you can download it from the various links upon the page, click it out, print it out, follow along at home. What I want you to do is just take a few minutes to read over this series of paragraphs and highlight the main idea, the evidence, the analysis, the links. You can do like I did. Maybe you're going to highlight main ideas in pink, evidence in blue, green analyses, and purple links. Go ahead. Try to do that. When you're ready, we'll move on. I want to take a closer look at the third paragraph on that printout excerpt I had for you. Now, by the way, here's a setup for that. If you go to the online rating lab at Purdue, and the online rating lab at Purdue is the greatest resource available for writers, all writers. You want to know how to write a body paragraph? Go to OWL. OWL will tell you. And Alan Breezy, in this case, wrote this piece that says a good paragraph should contain at least the 4 following elements: transition, topic sentence, specific evidence and analysis, and a brief wrap-up. TTEB, what a fun acronym. Now, TTEB seems quite a bit different than meal, but let's look at each part and see how different they truly are. So the first part is a transition sentence that leads from the previous paragraph to assure smooth reading. A handoff from one idea to the next. Sounds kind of familiar. Then a topic sentence that tells the reader what you're going to be discussing in the paragraph. That sounds really familiar. Specific evidence and analysis supports one of your claims that proves a deeper level of detail than your topic sentence. Oh my goodness. Here, the OWL actually married evidence and analysis into one thing. This is good advice. Every single time you offer your audience a piece of evidence, it really needs to be backed up with specific analysis on it, where you explain exactly what you want your reader to understand and to do with that evidence. The last one sounds a bit weird, but bear with me. A brief wrap-up is a sentence that tells your reader how and why this information is important to the paper's thesis. The brief wrap-up is also known as a warrant in Toulmin terms. The warrant is important to your argument because it connects your reasoning and support to your thesis, and it shows the information in the paragraph is related to your thesis and helps defend it. This sounds a whole lot like meal, except the OWL merged evidence and analysis into one thing, and it broke up the link into 2 things. So it starts with a transition, link 1, and then a topic sentence, main idea, evidence and analysis, one combined thing, which is a brilliant way to think about it, and then a brief wrap-up, which is link 2. Keep that in mind as we look at this sample from the excerpt. Here is a paragraph from Kevin Davis. These adaptations writers make to discourse communities are not limited, of course, to undergraduate college students. Everyone enters new communities throughout life. Carol Birkenkotter, Thomas Hucklin, and John Ackerman verified this when they examined the experience of a teacher who returned to graduate school after several years of teaching. In their study, they ended up agreeing with both the formalist and epistemics. They concluded the student writers have to assimilate both the forms and the thoughts of the academic discourse community to function within it. Their subject had to change the nature of his writing from personal exploration to impersonal declaration, but he had to also change his community allegiance. He had to learn to think like a member of the community. Can you find the meal elements in this paragraph? Let's start off easy. There's the main idea. Everyone enters into new communities through life. That is the seminal takeaway from this paragraph. That is our topic sentence. That sentence is then supported by this specific evidence. Carl Birkenkotter, Thomas Hucklin, and John Ackerman, in their study, they ended up agreeing with this, blah, blah, blah. All those are facts, just pure evidence. They're paraphrases that directly are undebatable. They're completely easily verified by looking into the Birkenhoff, Hucklin, and Ackerman piece from 1988. Easily proven fact. Because they're facts, they're evidence. They're just support for our claim everyone enters into new communities through life. But so what? What's their point? Well, the point is this. Their subject had to change the nature of his writing from personal exploration to impersonal declaration. But he had to change his community allegiance. He had to learn to think like a member of the community. That's the takeaway. That's the so what. That's what I want you to do with this when you read it. The last part's the link. The link is here, like OWL suggests, at the very beginning of the piece. These adaptation writers make to new discourse communities are not limited, of course, to undergraduate college students. Here is our segueing from the previous discussion of undergraduate college students to a more broad topic of everyone entering new discourse communities. So we're segueing from one paragraph to the next. And in this case, like OWL suggests, Davis put this at the beginning of the paragraph. Now let's make it a little more tricky. Let's look at another paragraph, the paragraph right before that last one, and see how it's the same thing. However, first, let's take a moment and give you a quick heads up. I'm hoping right about now you're wondering, am I serious? Does every single paragraph have to be 4 exact sentences? And they'll have to be main idea, evidence analysis link, main idea, evidence analysis link. No. MEAL is not an exact formula, it's a checklist. Every body paragraph has to have these 4 elements, but some paragraphs will offer a piece of evidence followed by analysis, another item of evidence, and more analysis, all of which under one main idea. Sometimes 2 MEAL parts will be in one sentence, such as a paragraph that starts with a transitional link and leads into a main idea. Keep that in mind. Both of those are going to come into play with this paragraph here. So let's try it again. With this in mind, where are the MEAL elements? Another research project completed by Lucille McCarthy studied one student as he learned to negotiate his way through new discourse communities in several different freshman and sophomore courses. McCarthy made several conclusions from her work. First, she found that her subject used the same writing process to figure out how to complete a variety of writing tasks. This would imply that a student who can write in one situation, like I could, can extrapolate a process for writing into other situations. Second, she found that the purpose for the writing task and the student's involvement in the task were important to the writer's success. This implies that students would write better if they were actively involved in the topic they were writing about, which is certainly true in my own experience. Finally, McCarthy concluded that writing tasks that are familiar in one situation were considered different when the student encountered them in a different situation. This implies the epistemic knowledge of a discourse community is important for a writer to succeed. Okay, so where's our MEAL parts? Well, the main idea is that second sentence. McCarthy made several conclusions from her work. This entire paragraph is talking about 3 seminal conclusions from McCarthy, and that is clearly what is the main idea of this paragraph. Now, the evidence is her list. First, she found this. Second, she found that. And finally, McCarthy concluded that other thing. That is all evidence, because it's all facts easily proven from her particular study. The analysis is interesting here, because the analysis is immediately following a semicolon after the evidence. This is very much what Al was conflating. Evidence analysis, evidence analysis, evidence analysis. But now look, we have 3 distinct pieces of evidence, all analyzed, followed by one central main idea. McCarthy made several conclusions. First, here's this, and here's what this means. Second, here's this, and here's what it means. And third, here's this, and here's what it means. And lastly, it starts off with a link. Now, the link's pretty weak on the transition because it's just another research project. So we were talking about a research project in the previous paragraph, and now we've gone on to another one. And then the rest of the link is fleshing out some details about this second research project. This is a weak link, but it is trying to segue from one research project to another, and then it's really trying to set up the background for this research project. Questions, comments, concerns? MEAL is seminal to this class. MEAL actually intersects with most of the rubric. Take a second, pull up the rubric and look at items 1 through 8. And I think you'll start noticing things like item 6, organization, and how you need to have good links. Or item 5, the thesis. Item 3, item 3, the evidence selection. Item 2, rhetorical theory. All these sort of intersect with this idea of main idea, evidence analysis, and link. So if you don't understand this, please come talk to me. Shoot me an email, give me a call, come in my office. Otherwise, I look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks.